what I see these things doing is slowing the speed down. And it's that stretch of Chestnut Street right in front of Rita's house, where people tend to accelerate.
But it's 25 miles an hour, so.
Oh, I know what it
right
is.
off, and I understand where.
I know what it is, but it's, I also know what, what people, the rate of speed people are traveling on it too. It's not 25 miles an hour.
Right.
So, as far as this deterring truck traffic, I mean, it's gonna slow them down in front of this one stretch of road, but that's not necessarily, the acceleration point is really coming from the DPW or coming from Park Street up Chestnut Street, heading into, past Central Street. They're really traveling a high rate of speed and then have to brake.
But I think this is, the intent of this is not to slow the trucks down. It's to discourage them from using that route. Right?
Well, I know
Otherwise it does nothing.
I'm not disagreeing, but it slows them down, but I mean, it slows the traffic down, which needs to be done too. But to me, we're not even hitting the speedway.
Well, where Kid Spot is, I mean, there's gonna be signs there approaching it as well. There's 3 signs prior to that, slow, and then there's a approach 15 miles an hour, and then there's also a sign where the crosswalk would go. And the crosswalk would be colored depending on what the engineering specs are.
But I just came through a neighborhood, funny, we should be talking about this timeliness of it all, is go to a client over in Burlington, through a residential neighborhood, where they had a series of 3 speed bumps in a residential neighborhood, which is just a straight shot, and,
Are those speed bumps or raised?
I call them speed bumps, but raised crosswalks.
The difference is
Yeah.
the width.
Yeah.
Right.
And they are designed for 25 miles an hour.
Correct.
This was the one that's being proposed to the engineer for the specifications.
Right.
But that discussion did come up about what you're talking about. By the time you get off of Park Street and you start heading up towards Haverhill, yeah, you can get up to a good clip, but I think there isn't a current crosswalk in that area now, so we'd have to add it.
Just to clarify in my mind, what are these raised crosswalks going to really do to deter trucks? What is it that deters the trucking from going over?
Well, I think the initial concerns that I was hearing wasn't about the trucks in general, it was about what they cause, the noise, the speed, the jake braking, and with installing these, it is gonna reduce the speed. It probably will not reduce the noise of them going over it, because they're gonna have to stop and accelerate. We explained that to the residents, but as far as the jake braking goes, they shouldn't be gaining enough speed down that roadway to use their jake brakes. So that was one of the options that we were looking at as far as what are gonna be the effects of this. So I think that the main concern was that, the spilling of the loads and everything else. It's going to be a nuisance for them to go down there on their own. We believe, may not, but we believe that they're gonna find alternative routes where it's gonna slow their ride down. They take that road to make up for time. So by going over 3 raised crosswalks, it's not an easier route for them.
We're talking about sending them, 2 to 4 miles out of their way, just for an extra, 28 seconds of saving time cutting through the route, really.
That may be so, yeah, we won't know that until we do an evaluation period on it.
What would you say the percentage of based on the number of people that attended and the number of households along that route, what percentage was there? I don't have
Why don't you look at the gentleman?
We had,
Why don't you come up to the microphone and identify it first?
from my calculations, we had every resident, sorry, Doug Lab, 130 Chestnut. We had just about every resident on the stretch from Park Street to Haverhill Street, 2 of the residents from Cedar Street, and then we had 2 residents, one from Upton and one from Cedar. And
I'd
as
say the majority of the residents were there.
the only residents that I knew that weren't there was Mr. Gordon, and I think that had to do more with his ability to get there. But he was in agreement, and his daughter, who lives on Cedar, was in agreement. And I think there was one other resident that didn't attend from Chestnut Street, and there was one resident that didn't come from Cedar Street, New Street, sorry. we took a hand vote. Everybody in the room raised their hands to vote for the 3 raised crosswalks. There was no dissensions, no abstentions. And everybody sort of that milled around outside after thought that this would be at least the first step in the right direction of trying to do this. Part of the idea of the raised crosswalks was that if it deters just enough of them, that may cut them down. If they're inconvenienced enough, they may just find a different way to where they're going. You know, she had brought up at the meeting, many of the trucks, you know, they just go the easiest route, and as soon as it becomes a little difficult or a little bit, they just find a different way that's easier for them, and they're not having to stop. One of the other aspects is the speed to which they're coming down, and they whip around those corners, and there's 2 blind corners that come up on the hill from that stretch, and they're coming around that corner onto Upton's the first one that they would come to, right? I know my neighborhood well. And it's that they come up that hill and they're zipping around the corner, or they come around the turn, or from New Street, and they roll right through that stop sign, and that's a concern of the speed. But I think the crosswalks would slow down that speed. The noise aspect, I think we all kind of give or take. One of the concerns for us as well that was brought up at the meeting is, if we go for the truck exclusion, where are we going to be pushing them? And are we just giving the problem to a different part of town or a different neighborhood that's around the corner from us? And a couple of the residents on the edge of, that sit on the corner of Chestnut and Haverhill had that concern as to the trucks now turning in front of their house as opposed to, or coming down in front of their house at a higher rate of speed. And I think we all kind of agreed that if we can just minimize it or slow them down, that might be the first best step, and we'll, you know, all wait and see anxiously that it just disappears.
I did have one concern at the meeting, and I had asked Chief Murphy to reach out to Chief Warnick, because my thought was we throw these down. I know they're designed for 25 miles an hour, but we also have to be in consideration for response times. So I did meet with Chief Warnick, him and I, and Chief Galvin. We went out and did a little site review, and they are concerned. My question was, will this reduce response time? And the answer is yes. And I just wanted to address it. I'm not saying we should change our minds because of it. I think when you look at where they're going to be positioned, they have a couple ways to get to it, and each way at best they'd have to go over maybe 2 of them, and it could have a small effect on the response time. I won't speak for you, Bill, but I know you've informed me that he is not in favor of these, only because it will reduce his response time. And if you want to say something, I think this would be an appropriate time.
Thank you. The department's policy has always been to try to reduce issues like this. I don't know if you remember, we had a similar issue down the Greens where they installed the speed bumps and we had them removed. With that being said, the question posed to me is that will it have an effect on our response times? The answer is absolutely. You can't go over these things in a large fire department vehicle, whether it's an engine, a ladder, or an ambulance, without stopping and starting. You gotta go over, stop, bring the back end over, and then continue on. If there's 3 of those there, that means we have to start and stop 6 times. I'm not saying that every call that we need to go on, that's gonna have to happen, but what the board needs to know is that it is going to affect our response times. What does that mean? That means if you choose to do this, it is what it is. We'll work around it, but our response times may be delayed in that area. That's really what you need to know. I also reached out to 2 fire chiefs from bordering communities, not bordering, but communities that I knew that had it, asked them if they had any issues with it. They responded back to me that they didn't have issues with it. And I don't really understand that, because there's no way for a fire truck to go over that 20-mile thing, going 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour. You have to actually stop. So what I think's happened is they've gotten used to it over time, and they're able to work with it. I'm just letting you know that it will slow us down.
Jeff?
Yes, what about with the ALS services that we're having now, we're going to be having?
The ambulance will still need to stop and go over it, and then stop and continue on.
So
Right.
if they have an urgent care type situation, or a person at risk
In that
ambulance,
area.
in that area, I mean,
Right.
if that's going to impact that service
That's correct, but it is what it is.
I understand that.
If we need to do it, we need to do it. But you just need to know that the question was posed, will it reduce our response times? The answer is yes.
Also, just, you know, Mike Sorrigan has been involved, Chief. Chief Murphy had obtained some of the drawings and engineering information from other towns and has provided that to Mike, and I think there is an estimate yet, or I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I reached out to Mike today. He said that he gave the information. I'm not sure who he gave it to, but it was presented somewhere.
Okay. I mean, the number roughly about $2,000 for each one of these has been tossed around. But I think Mike is trying to work on getting us a more solidified number than that.
I'm assuming
And-
there's no money in the
And Dick
budget
has,
for it
well,
right
and Dick
now.
has claimed that his guys could do the work. We don't have to outsource
So
it.
it's just
Those numbers
materials.
are actually outsourced numbers. If we could do it ourselves internally, it could be less expensive, but we haven't gotten there yet with the final number. And I know we don't have the money in the current budgets anywhere, but I would like to have that discussion. If the board, first of all, we need to decide as a board, are we in favor of this idea? And then if we are, do we want to try to attack it now under the current operating year, or do we want to try to look towards June town meeting to address it? I'd like to address it sooner than later myself, but I think we need to deal with the first one, whether we want it or not, before we even go down to discussion about money.
As part of the unanimous vote that the town, or that the members took that were at the meeting with the chief, it was under the idea that this was gonna be happening sooner than later, and that if this wasn't gonna be something that was gonna be happening, that we would then want to move forward with the truck exclusion, and that was sort of the understanding, so not to, I don't know, make it a, but that was sort of the condition that we were looking at. If this isn't gonna be happening in the next 6 months, then for the next town meeting, whenever this had to be put up for the truck exclusion, to have everybody have their open hearing on, that we would move forward with that and go with the, pushing the truck exclusion. It's not something that it's been a long time, and it's not something they're looking to as a group, and I don't know that I can speak for them, but at least it was my understanding at that meeting was that if this isn't an option, or it's not something that we're gonna be going forward with, then we're gonna look to push it to the town meeting for the exclusion.
Okay, but you're okay with it not happening until after July 1st?
The decision of whether or not
No,
to.
no, no, no. It's, I think
It's a
we can
fiscal
make a
year
decision.
thing. When the money is available.
A decision can be made relatively quickly once we get some additional information on the cost. But from a budget point of view, there's unlikely extra money in the DPW budget to pay for it in this fiscal year. So it would be next fiscal year's budget, which begins on July 1st.
Well, we don't know that.
No, we don't, but I'm saying.
We don't.
We don't know what.
Maybe there is, maybe there is.
But if
Because we don't
that's
know
the case, what do you believe the wishes are of the neighborhood?
What's that? Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Malone?
Rita Mullen, I think the idea of what most of the 25, 30 people felt that night is, if you could do it immediately, it gave you a chance really to see if it's going to work. Gives us 60 to 90 days. I think they were under the impression we'd like to see it done tomorrow. You know, do it and then see if it works, because they are concerned, and I think the reason the neighborhood originally brought it up is how fast they all go, how the trucks all go. And at least it's a deterrent, safety-wise, to stop it. So I think that it's the point that it's almost an emergency type of thing, that before somebody gets hurt down there, to do it now, and then it gives you time to look at the truck exclusion route. They didn't want to look at the truck exclusion route yet, because it's going to take a lot longer, and this was a good way of saying, look, if this works within 90 days, then hopefully most of the trucks are going to realize they shouldn't go there. I spoke to Mr. Moynihan after the meeting too, because I said I didn't want to speak for him, but after talking to him about what the options were, he thought that was a great idea, do it, and do it right away, before you go to the truck exclusion route way.
And here's the reason why, because we have to hold a public hearing. If we decide not to fund this right away,